Commander Vex'thak of the Zephyrian Empire stood 12 feet tall, his forearms crossed in perfect symmetry as he gazed down at the pathetic creature before him. The human, barely reaching his chest, had somehow managed to infiltrate the most secure military compound in 3 star systems. Now the fool stood there, completely unarmed, with nothing but flesh and bone against the finest weaponry the galaxy had to offer. Well, Vex'thak rumbled, his voice echoing to the cavernous detention chamber like distant thunder. What do we have here? A lost little monkey who wandered too far from his tree. The human said nothing. He simply stood there, hands loose at his sides, breathing steadily. His name was Jake Morrison, though the aliens didn't know that yet. They didn't know a lot of things about him yet. Vex'thak's mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among his species. Tell me, primitive creature, what exactly did you hope to accomplish here? Did you think you could somehow rescue your pathetic friends? Did you imagine yourself a hero from one of your childish entertainment programs? Jake tilted his head slightly, a ghost of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Actually, I was thinking more along the lines of a family reunion. The alien commander's 4 eyes narrowed. Something in the human's tone didn't sit right with him, but he dismissed the feeling. After all, what could one small, soft, defenseless primate possibly do against the might of the Zephyrian war machine? Family reunion? Vex'thak repeated, his voice dripping with mockery. Oh, how precious. And exactly which family members were you hoping to see again? The ones we vaporized on Earth Colony 7? Or perhaps the ones we fed to the Carnith beasts on Titan Station? Jake's smile grew wider, but his eyes remained cold as winter starlight. All of them, actually, but especially my little sister Sarah. She was only 8 when you bastards turned her into space dust. Vex'thak threw back his massive head and roared with laughter. The sound bounced off the metal walls like thunder in a cave. Oh, this is too rich. The monkey thinks he's going to avenge his deceased family. Tell me, little man, exactly how do you propose to accomplish this miraculous feat of justice? Are you going to bite my ankles? Perhaps throw some of your own feces at me? The other Zephyrian guards joined in their commander's mirth, their chittering and clicking filling the air with an alien symphony of derision. They had good reason to be amused. After all, they had conquered 17 different species across the galaxy. None had ever proven to be more than a minor inconvenience. Humans, with their soft skin and fragile bones, seemed like they would be the easiest prey yet. Jake stretched his neck from side to side, rolling his shoulders as if working out a kink. You know, Vex'thak, I've been looking forward to this conversation for 3 years now. The commander's laughter died in his throat. How do you know my name? Oh, I know lots of things about you. Big guy. I know you were the one who ordered the bombardment of the refugee ships. I know you personally oversaw the executions on Kepler Station. I know you have a collection of human skulls in your private quarters that you like to show off to your subordinates. Jake's voice remained conversational, almost friendly, but there was something underneath it now, something that made the temperature in the room seem to drop by several degrees. Vex'thak's confidence wavered for just a moment before reasserting itself. Intelligence gathering. Impressive for such a primitive species. But information won't save you now, monkey. Nothing will. See, that's where you're wrong, Jake said, cracking his knuckles one by one. The sound echoed to the chamber like small gunshots. You made one very fundamental error in your calculations. And what might that be? Jake looked up at the towering alien commander, his smile now showing teeth. You assumed I came here alone. Vex'thak's 4 eyes darted around the chamber, suddenly alert. Impossible. Our sensors detected only one life form. Your sensors detected only one human life form, Jay corrected. But see, the thing about humans is that we're really, really good at making friends. And some of our friends aren't exactly human anymore. The lights in the detention chamber suddenly flickered and died, plunging the room into absolute darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow that made shadows dance on the walls like vengeful spirits. What did you do? Vex'thak snarled, his forearms reaching for the plasma rifles mounted on his belt. Me? I didn't do anything. Jake's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once in the shifting light. But my friend Marcus, well, he's been having some issues with authority figures ever since you guys turned him into a cyborg against his will. Turns out, forced technological integration really pisses him off. Alarms began blaring throughout the facility. The wailing sirens mixed with the sounds of explosions echoing from somewhere deep within the complex. Vex'thak subordinates were chattering nervously in their own language, their weapon systems powering up with high-pitched whines. You think your pathetic sabotage will save you? Vex'thak roared, his voice barely audible over the chaos. I will tear you apart with my bare hands. Funny thing about that, Jake said, his voice now coming from directly behind the commander. I was thinking the exact same thing. Vex'thak spun around, all four arms moving with lethal precision. But Jake was no longer where he had been standing. The human had somehow moved through the shadows like a ghost, positioning himself in the exact spot where he could do the most damage. Looking for me? Jake asked innocently. The alien commander's plasma rifle discharged, sending a bolt of superheated energy through the space where Jake had been standing milliseconds before. But humans, as Vex'thak was about to learn, were remarkably good at not being where their enemies expected them to be. Jake moved like liquid lightning. His body flowed between the alien's four arms as if he were dancing instead of fighting. His first strike caught Vex'thak in the solar plexus. If Zephyrians had such a thing, doubling the massive creature over with surprising effectiveness. Impossible, Vex'thak wheezed, his breath coming in short gasps. You're just a soft, weak primate. Soft, Jake asked, driving an elbow into the alien's side with enough force to crack chitin. Weak! He grabbed one of Vex'thak's four arms and twisted, eliciting a shriek of pain from the commander. You know what your problem is, Vex'thak? You never bothered to do your homework. Jake released a twisted arm and stepped back as Vex'thak stumbled, clutching his injured limb. The other guards were trying to get a clear shot, but their commander kept getting in the way. You see, Jake continued, his voice casual as if he were discussing the weather, humans have this really annoying habit of adapting. We take whatever you throw at us, and we figure out how to use it against you. You turn my friend Marcus into a cyborg? Well, guess what? Now he can hack into your systems and turn your own base against you. You destroyed our colonies? Now we know exactly how your weapons work. More explosions rocked the facility, closer this time. The emergency lighting flickered and sparked, casting wild shadows that made it nearly impossible to track Jake's movements. And you want to know the best part? Jake asked, advancing on the wounded commander. You killed my family, so I had nothing left to lose. Do you know what humans are capable of when they have nothing left to lose, Vex'thak? The alien commander tried to bring his remaining functional arms up in a defensive posture, but Jake floated around them like water around a stone. His fists found every weak point in the alien's anatomy with surgical precision. We become very, very creative, Jake whispered, his voice so close to Vex'thak's ear that the alien could feel the human's breath on his exoskeleton. Vex'thak's three remaining functional eyes went wide as he felt something cold and sharp press against his throat. When had the human acquired a blade? The answer came to him with horrifying clarity as he recognized the familiar weight and balance of his own ceremonial dagger. You took this from my belt, he gasped in disbelief. Sleight of hand, Jake explained cheerfully. Another one of those annoying human talents you should have researched. We're really good with our fingers. The explosions were getting closer now, and through the chaos, Vex'thak could hear something that chilled him to his alien bones. Screaming. His own soldiers, screaming in terror and pain. But that was impossible. Zephyrian warriors didn't scream. They didn't know how. What have you done to my troops? Vex'thak demanded. Me? Nothing at all. But my friend Lisa, well, she used to be a biochemist before you guys got to her. Turns out, 3 years of captivity gave her lots of time to think about creative applications for alien physiology. She's been working on some interesting projects. A new sound joined the symphony of destruction echoing through the base. Laughter. Human laughter. But wrong somehow, twisted and broken and filled with joy that had nothing to do with happiness. That would be Tommy, Jake said conversationally. He used to be a comedian before your people lobotomized him. Funny thing about human brains, though, sometimes when you damage them, they don't break the way you expect. Sometimes they just, redirect. Vex'thak was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible miscalculation. This wasn't just one human seeking revenge. This was something far worse. This was a pack of humans who had been pushed beyond their breaking point and had somehow managed to survive long enough to push back. "How many of you are there?" he whispered. Jake's smile and the red emergency lighting looked more terrifying than any weapon Vex'thak had ever faced. "Oh, that's the beautiful part, Vex. We're everywhere. Every human you thought you killed, every prisoner you thought you broke, every slave you thought you controlled. We've been waiting and planning and preparing." The detention chamber door exploded inward, revealing a figure that had once been human but was now something else entirely. Marcus, the cyborg, stood in the doorway like a metallic angel of death, his glowing red eyes scanning the room with mechanical precision. "Jake," Marcus said, his voice a harmony of human vocal cords and electronic modulation. "The primary reactor is ready for overload. We have approximately 10 minutes before this entire facility becomes a very large firework." "Perfect timing," Jake replied, never taking his eyes off Vex'thak. "I was just explaining to Commander here about the concept of poetic justice." Vex'thak looked from Jake to Marcus and back again, his alien mind finally grasping the magnitude of his situation. This was all planned. From the moment you allowed yourself to be captured. "Allowed?" Jake laughed, and the sound was somehow worse than Tommy's broken mirth echoing through the halls. "Oh, Vex'thak, you still don't get it, do you? I didn't allow myself to be captured. I invited myself to your little party." The massive alien commander stumbled backward, his four eyes wide with a terror he had never experienced before. In all his centuries of conquest across 17 different worlds, Vex'thak had never encountered prey that fought back with such calculated fury. "You're insane," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the continuing explosions that were systematically tearing his fortress apart. "Insane?" Jake tilted his head, considering the word as if it were a fine wine he was savoring. "You know, Vex, that's probably fair. Watching your 8-year-old sister get vaporized tends to have that effect on people. But the thing about insanity is that it makes you incredibly creative." Marcus stepped further into the chamber, his mechanical limbs moving with fluid precision. "Jake, we need to move. Lisa's chemical surprises are working better than expected, but the structural integrity of this section is compromising rapidly." "In a minute," Jake said, his grip tightening on the ceremonial dagger. "Vex'thak and I are having a philosophical discussion about the nature of justice." Another figure appeared in the doorway behind Marcus. This one had once been a woman, but now her left arm ended in a collection of surgical instruments that gleamed wickedly in the red light. Her eyes, once probably kind, now held the focused intensity of a predator. "Hello, Commander," Lisa said, her voice carrying the professional detachment of a scientist discussing experimental results. "I've been looking forward to meeting you for quite some time. Your species has such interesting neurochemistry." Vex'thak's remaining guards finally found their voices and opened fire, but their plasma bolts simply bounced off Marcus's reinforced chassis, while Lisa moved with inhuman speed, her surgical instruments deflecting the energy blasts with surgical precision. "You can't kill all of us," one of the guards chittered in his native language. Jake understood every word. 3 years of captivity had given him time to learn many things, including several alien languages. "Actually," he said conversationally, switching to perfect Zephyrian, "that's exactly what we can do, and will do. The only question is whether we do it quickly or slowly." The guard who had spoken stumbled backward in shock. Humans weren't supposed to be able to master Zephyrian linguistics. The tonal complexities alone should have been impossible for their primitive vocal cords. Surprised? Jake asked, his accent flawless. "You really should have studied us more carefully before you decided to make us your enemies. Humans have this annoying tendency to exceed expectations." A fourth figure materialized from the shadows, moving with fluidity that defied physics. Tommy had once been a comedian, but the lobotomy the Zephyrians had performed on him had rewired his neural pathways in unexpected ways. Now he moved like living shadow, his damaged mind processing spatial relationships in ways that allowed him to exist in spaces that should have been impossible. "Hey, Jake," Tommy said, his voice carrying the same unsettling quality as his earlier laughter. "The party's really getting started upstairs. The Zephyrians are discovering that their own security systems make excellent weapons when you convince them that everyone in the building is an intruder." "Beautiful work," Jake replied, never taking his attention off Vex'thak. "Tommy here used to make people laugh for a living," he explained to the terrified commander. "But after your people scrambled his brains, he discovered he has a real talent for making people scream instead." Vex'thak was backing toward the far wall, his injured arm clutched against his chest. "This is impossible. Humans don't have the capacity for this level of coordination. Your species is too primitive, too fractured, too emotional." "Oh, but that's where you're wrong again," Jake said, following the alien's retreat step by step. "See, you're thinking about this all wrong. You're trying to apply your own psychology to us, and that's your fundamental error." Lisa moved to flank the commander from the left, while Marcus covered the right. Tommy simply stood in the doorway, blocking the only exit, his presence somehow making the entire room feel smaller and more claustrophobic. "When you conquered other species," Jake continued, "they broke down along predictable lines. Fear, despair, submission. But humans, well, we have this really inconvenient psychological quirk. When you push us to our absolute breaking point, when you take away everything we have to lose, we don't break down." He paused, letting the words sink in while the sounds of systematic destruction echoed through the facility. "We break through." Vex'thak's back hit the wall, and he realized with growing horror that he was trapped. His guard were dead, their bodies cooling on the floor in pools of alien blood. His fortress was collapsing around him. His entire military command was being systematically destroyed by creatures he had dismissed as insignificant vermin. "What do you want?" he whispered. Jake's smile was colder than the vacuum of space. "Want? Oh, Vex, you still don't understand. This isn't about wanting anything. This is about completing a transaction that you started 3 years ago when you murdered my family." "You want revenge," Vex'thak said, grasping for some kind of negotiating position. "Fine. I understand revenge. Name your terms." "Terms." Jake laughed, and the sound echoed strangely in the confines of the chamber. "You think this is a negotiation? Oh, you poor, deluded creature. This isn't about revenge anymore. This stopped being about revenge the moment you taught us what we were capable of becoming." Marcus stepped forward, his mechanical voice adding electronic harmonies to his words. "You tried to break us individually. Instead, you forged us into something collective, something unified by shared trauma and mutual purpose. You turned us into weapons," Lisa added, her surgical instruments clicking together rhythmically. "But you forgot to install an off switch." Tommy giggled, the sound somehow managing to be cheerful and terrifying at the same time. "And you know what the funny part is? We're not even the only team. There are dozens of us now, maybe hundreds. Every human you thought you controlled, every prison you thought you broke, they're all out there learning, adapting, preparing." Vex'thak's 4 eyes darted between the 4 humans, his alien mind finally grasping the true scope of what he was facing. "You're not just escaping. You're not just seeking revenge. You're starting a war." "Starting?" Jake shook his head sadly. "Oh, Vex'thak, you're still not paying attention. The war already started 3 years ago, when you decided that humans were nothing more than disposable resources. We're not starting anything." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. "We're finishing it." The facility shuddered as another series of explosions rocked the foundations. Through the walls, they could hear the death screams of Zephyrian soldiers as Lisa's biochemical innovations did their work. Marcus's mechanical modifications to the base's systems were turning every automated defense against its creators. Tommy's psychological warfare was driving the survivors into complete panic. "But don't worry," Jake continued, his voice returning to its conversational tone. "You won't be around to see how it ends. Because, see, Vex'thak, you have a very important role to play in our little drama." "What role?" Jake's smile widened. "You get to be the message." With surgical precision, Jake began his work. Vex'thak screams echoed through the facility, adding a bass note to the symphony of destruction that was consuming everything the Zephyrian Empire had built in this system. When it was over, when the commander's broken body finally fell silent, Jake stood and wiped the alien blood from his hands with calm efficiency. Marcus, how long until the reactor goes critical? 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Perfect. Tommy, are the escape pods prepped? Already, boss. Course laid in for the Proxima rendezvous point. Lisa, did you get the data downloads from their central computer? Every file, every communication, every strategic plan they had. Our friends back home are going to be very interested in what the Zephyrians were planning for Earth's remaining colonies. Jake took one last look at Vex'thak's corpse, then turned toward the exit. Then our work here is done. Time go spread the good news. They moved through the burning corridors of the facility like ghosts, stepping over the bodies of guards who had learned too late that humans were far more dangerous than they appeared. Behind them, the fortress that had once been a symbol of Zephyrian dominance was consumed by fire and fury. As their escape pod launched into the star-filled darkness, Jake looked back at the expanding fireball that had once been their prison. Somewhere in that inferno was a message that would eventually reach every corner of the Zephyrian Empire, a message written in blood and fire and the screams of the dying. The message was simple but profound. It would echo across star systems and through the corridors of power throughout the galaxy. It would be whispered in fear by alien commanders and shouted in defiance by human prisoners. Humanity remembers. Humanity adapts. And humanity always collects its debts. In the distance, other fires were beginning to bloom as similar teams of transformed humans struck simultaneously across a dozen different star systems. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson that would be written in the histories of 100 different species. When you push humans to their breaking point, they don't break. They become something else entirely. Something that remembers. Something that adapts. Something that never, ever forgives. The escape pod disappeared into hyperspace, carrying its cargo of transformed humanity toward their next target. Behind them, the flames continued to burn, visible from 3 star systems away. The war for humanity's survival had begun, and Vex'thak's smile definitely hadn't lasted.